It is Thursday morning. It is the 19th of November 2015. It is 8:44, and I am sitting in our dining room having morning devotions. And I was thinking it's like I've been making these book videos and talking about books and the books that I get at the thrift stores, and you can tell from my videos that I'm a bookworm. I love books. I've loved books all my life, it seems. But I grew up as a boy. I grew up among people who didn't read books. Probably didn't. I know even they finished high school. And I became a Christian after I graduated from high school in 1970. And like I've said it in the videos, that when I became a Christian, the first 5 years I was really immature and did a lot of dumb and foolish things. Didn't really live the Christian life consistently. I was involved in the Jesus People there in Richmond and Berkeley, California, and I belonged to a First Baptist church there in Richmond, but I was walking the ways of the world and giving into my lustful youth, the lust of my youth. But I went to college, and then I worked in a rescue mission. I was on staff at the Richmond Rescue Mission for a couple of years. And when I was working at the rescue mission on staff there, as I mentioned, I used to study the Bible by going through reading commentaries. And I mentioned in a previous video that I bought that commentary in the Epistle of Hebrews by A.W. Pink. And he got me into the Puritans, and I started reading the Puritans. And then around that same time, I found out that there was a church in Berkeley that preached in the theology and the spirituality of the 17th century English Puritans. And there was a church in Berkeley, California called the Covenant Orthodox Presbyterian Church. And I called the minister up, Pastor Richard Lewis, and make a long story short, I joined that church. I joined the Orthodox Presbyterian Church. And what really impressed me about the church, coming out of the charismatic movement and in a Baptist church, is that the way Pastor Richard Lewis preached, he preached through books of the Bible, verse by verse. He preached exegetical sermons. He looked at the text, he explained the text, and he applied the text. And as I was a member there at that OPC church, he went through the Gospels, all 4 Gospels. He preached to the Psalms, and he preached to the book of Job, and I never heard preaching like that. But that's how the Puritans are. If you read the Puritans, they preach the text, they explain the text, and they apply the text. And so that's how I got into the OPC. And then when I left California to go to Bible college in 1978, by that time I was dating my wife, and we went to a small independent Reformed church, and the guy preached the same way. And so all my Christian life since 1977, I've gone to churches that preach the Bible verse by verse, going through books of the Bible. And that's when I was in seminary, that's what I was trained to do, preach to the books of the Bible. And that's why you've noticed that even though I never went into the ministry, it's a long story why the doors were closed to becoming a minister. After Bible college, I went to seminary, I looked for a call. I did an internship in Houston, Texas for a couple of years in the Presbyterian Church in America. But I continue to read as a minister. I continue to study the Bible like a minister would. And that's probably why the books that I mentioned in my videos. And sometimes I think that I'm giving the impression that the average Christian is supposed to have the library that I have, and I realize that's false. That I realize that the books that I read, like Virtue and the Voice of God Toward a Theology of Wisdom by Daniel J. Trier, and I got this book in the mail yesterday, The Reality of God and Historical Method, Apocalyptic Theology, Conversation with N.W.N.T. Wright by Samuel V. Adams. I realize that the average Christian probably doesn't read these books, or never would. And I realize that. But every Christian can sit down when he has the time, and he ought to make a time every day to read the Bible and to read good books. There's all kinds of Christian books, and some are bad and some are good, and that's why I think the Puritans are good to read, even though I don't agree with the Puritans. I don't agree with their covenant theology. I don't agree with their view of the law. I don't believe in infant baptism. I don't believe in their view of the Lord's Supper, the sacraments, but they're still good to read, because there's a lot of literature out there for Christians and people to read that are really bad. They're shallow. They present a false view of conversion. They don't really set forth Christ in all His glory, and they don't set forth what salvation is. They don't set forth what the Christian life is, about holiness and sanctification and seeking after God every day and living a devotional life. And so if all the things out there to read, I recommend the English Puritans. And I do recommend this commentary series. It looks big, but it's very practical. It's very devotional. That's why I've been reading it in the mornings. And it's good to. I got this book when I was in seminary. I took an intensive 1-month class with Peter Toon, and he wrote this book, From Mind to Heart, Christian Meditation Today. And this is a really good book to read, because when you have devotions, you come to the Bible in the morning and you pray. You say, "Oh, Holy Spirit, open my mind, teach me your word, put your word in my heart, give me divine wisdom, give me longings for you, desires for you, that I might seek your face this day and live in a way that pleases you, to be a good worker, a good husband, a good grandfather, to be a good neighbor, to have compassion for people who are out there in the world who are having a hard and difficult time." And then you read the Bible, and you're always looking to God to enlighten you and to instruct you and teach you your truth. And then you take what the Lord lays upon you, and you pray about it, and you meditate upon it, and you seek by the power of the Holy Spirit to live in a way that glorifies God and pleases Him. So that's what. And when you read the Bible, it's not something just purely intellectual. It's a spiritual exercise. You do this out of love for God. The Bible is God speaking to you because we're His children. He's our Father, and He loves us, and He wants us to know Him. He wants to instruct us, and He wants us to live in a way that will not only glorify Him, but bring joy and happiness and blessedness in our life. Now, it's not saying we don't have trials and sufferings and difficulties, but the Lord gives grace and strength, and our lives are quickly passing by and fleeing, and then one day we'll be before His presence, before the face of God, and glorifying Him and living in the new creation. And that's what life is. It passes very quickly. I'm going to be 64 years old next year. Carol's father died when he was 64, and my wife's father. So life goes very quickly. But so we need to seek the Lord each day, and part of that is having devotions in the morning and seeking to read good books. Like I said, read the Puritans and just seek to glorify God each day. So I just want to say that this morning. Bye.